Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Whew, hope you are having a fantastic day. Now, this is one of the videos I really wanted to get to yesterday. I have a couple more. Some things happened pretty fast. Unfortunately, I was struck down in the prime of my video making time yesterday with a migraine. So, you may have heard about this story, but of course, as I try and do, might have a different spin that is informing and entertaining for you, and a bit of an update that if you did see this yesterday, you might not have gotten. So, Pat McAfee, as you can see here, by this headline says he implies that ESPN bosses told him not to talk about Caitlin Clark anymore. And this is in a discussion with Rich Eisen, which I will play for you so you can hear what Pat says. And this goes back for a refresher of those of you that might have missed it, back around the whole Kennedy Carter thing that was going on with the assault on Caitlin Clark, and how Angel Reese reacted and how the rest of the league reacted, and the other, hard extracurricular quote unquote fouls that were happening and everything going on along with Caitlin Clark and how she was treated, as well as this idea that she was struggling and she wasn't that good, and Angel Reese was rookie of the year and all that. And Pat did this segment. It was a really, really good segment, actually, just from a basketball perspective and what he was doing. I thought it was really good. And then at the end, he ended with, to take away, what had been said about her, he ended with that witch. And of course it wasn't witch, and saying she's our witch, right? Um, and it was very much a pro Caitlin Clark statement. And look, I completely understand, and I have no issue with you if anyone who feels the way they're like, hey, you know what? I love what Pat did. I do understand what he was doing and what he meant, but I'm not on board with how he did it. Fine, no problem. We all agree and disagree on stuff like that all the time. But here are a couple other things, because this is important, because here we have an editor's note, right? And so you wouldn't have gotten this yesterday if you did pay attention to the story. After it was published, McAfee publicly stated that ESPN has zero say over his show and that he was not referring to ESPN management when he made the comments about Caitlin Clark. A couple of things. One, of course, he could have been told to say that because everyone thought he was talking about ESPN, which does a lot of damage. So ESPN could say, hey, Pat, everyone knows what you meant. It's not a good look for us. You need to go back and say, hey, that's not what I was talking about. But of course, unless he explains and can prove what he was talking about, everyone's going to say what I just said. You know what? ESPN, this is probably a little CYA. So they're going to have Pat go out and do this. Because to those points, one, like it says here, if you think you've heard a lot less Caitlin Clark talk from McAfee since then, you might be onto something. And that is true. Also, a lot of people, when Pat went to ESPN, because Pat is known for speaking his mind, he is rough around the edges, and a lot of people like him for that. And when they heard about the deal with ESPN, a lot of people were like, we're not going to get the same Pat McAfee. ESPN isn't what it used to be. ESPN censors people. You have to say certain things and avoid saying other things to be at ESPN. It's going to change Pat. And there have been issues with Pat McAfee and things he said, and ESPN and reaction and all of that since. So that is what is swirling about for everybody around this story. So first we're going to listen to Pat, and then I'm going to talk about a couple of other things, because whether it is about whether it's ESPN or not, as far as him not talking about Caitlin Clark, there are also some other things that this had me thinking about, especially with what just went on in the Olympics as well, with regard to the issues that we talk about with the sports media and how things with Caitlin Clark are treated versus other players. So first, let's take a listen to this. I don't. it's a minute and a half. I don't know if we'll listen to the whole thing because I think towards the end, Rich starts talking about other things in this clip and just kind of like praising Pat McAfee for what he's done and so forth. But let us take a listen to this.
Which is wild. Like the Olympics saved us this year. I assume same thing for you over there?
Caitlin Clark too, pal. There's no question about it.
Well, the universe told me not to talk about her.
Uh-oh. Is that right?
The universe. The universe.
Yeah, sent some messages.
Yeah, God came in and was like, you know what, pal? Probably go ahead and stop it.
I had no idea about that. Did you have a different universe? By the way, we're back on the Roku channel.
Oh, it's great to be back. Hey, this is a good universe.
You're back. You're back. I've got about a minute and 50 seconds till the radio audience rejoins, and that'll be a big audience. So listen, why is the universe telling you not to talk about Caitlin Clark?
Because I'm an idiot. The reason is because I'm an idiot. And I want to say, we are big supporters. We took show to Iowa to support during the first day of men's March Madness to launch the women's March Madness because just wanted to catch the vibe of what Iowa was with Caitlin Clark on camp. I think what she has done, obviously, remarkable. Now, it's the whole rookie class and yada, yada, yada. We get it.
Now, a couple of points to that. First of all, when he's talking about being an idiot, that is because he's referring to himself and how he phrased that and how he tried to take that phrase and what she was called and make it a pro Caitlin Clark thing. He was very annoyed during that whole segment, and I didn't blame him. I thought what he did was fantastic. For those of you that remember all the nonsense that was going on at the time, even more than what keeps going now. And also true what he says about being a big supporter, and he's gone to Iowa. He's been a big Caitlin Clark supporter all along. He's interviewed Caitlin Clark. And also, by the way, I think it was the next day, if not the day after at the latest, he got in touch with Caitlin Clark. And to no one's surprise, who's watched Caitlin Clark handle herself, didn't bother her. No big deal. We're good. Because I'm sure, unlike the people that wanted to get all upset and use this against Caitlin Clark's fans, Caitlin Clark knew what Pat McAfee was saying, didn't bother her. And by the way, just for those who are like, I kind of didn't like it. Look, if you understand what Pat was doing in terms of using that as a compliment and you're just like, well, I don't really like, I understand what he was saying, but I don't really like it. I don't think he should have used that phrase. That's fine. The issue that I have and that we're going to get into is that people tried to act like they were all offended and upset for Caitlin Clark. And they tried to make it like Pat McAfee was insulting Caitlin Clark and actually calling her that as an insult, which we know isn't true. Now, so you know, this, do we all remember this? This is what got Pat all worked up. No sound, so pay attention to Kennedy Carter's mouth on this one right before she assaults Caitlin Clark for no reason at all other than possibly jealousy. Now there you can see she clearly called her the witch. So that is where that was coming from. We also have this. If you've seen my video, I think I did a couple because this was so long. I did a couple. I revisited it later and talked about some different things. But we are almost 5 minutes, 4:46 into a 5:49 bit of Gino Auriemma, the awful coach of Connecticut, who had a say and a part in keeping Caitlin Clark off the Olympic team, who just ranted for almost 5 minutes about how awful Caitlin Clark's fans are and how literally saying how stupid they are and all this other stuff. And then also saying that Caitlin Clark didn't have the skills or the physicality to succeed in the WNBA. And then he thought, oh, you know what? Maybe I went crazy over the top. So I'm going to redirect and I'm going to lie and I'm going to pretend to support her because this was right after the Pat McAfee thing. Okay. So this comes out of left field. He just does all his nonsense about how Paige is a better player in terms of her skill set, in terms of making the jump to the WNBA and being a better player than Caitlin Clark. Because Paige is a distributor. Gino, who leads the WNBA in assists? Who has the single game assist record in the WNBA? Who has gone 4 games in a row with 13 or more assists, which has never happened before? Who led the NCAA and the nation in the NCAA in assists 3 years in a row? I believe it was Caitlin Clark. So then he completely out of left field. He brings up the Pat McAfee thing, and of course he takes the angle of McAfee was being like, well, like Gino and like Monica McNutt and like Elle Duncan and like uh, Andrea Carter and Cheryl Swoops and Dawn Staley. And he's going to take I'm so offended that Pat McAfee insulted Caitlin Clark and called her that. So let's check this out.
They've done to this kid. This kid doesn't deserve all this.
Right after saying she's not good enough to be in the WA and completely trashing her fans and calling them stupid and so forth, all of a sudden he goes, oh, she doesn't deserve all this, because he wants to launch into Pat McAfee and purposely take it the wrong way.
Yeah. Nobody deserves all this. And how about this, Dan? You and I have known each other long enough. Have you ever called a player on your show a white?
No.
What gives someone the right to do that?
I think McAfee was.
See, so that's the world.
He was trying to do it as a compliment, I guess. Like he was praising her.
I don't know.
Yeah. That's what he said.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
But just the fact that we live in a society where today you can't say that.
Okay, first of all, he goes on about how he thinks like you can say anything you want now and it didn't used to be like that, which shows you how like delusional he is, because we all know it's the opposite of that nowadays. Now, Dan, I will give you a little bit of credit, and I will say a little because he kind of pushed back by saying it was meant as a compliment, which everyone knows if you watch it, it's so obvious it was meant as a comment. You can say that you don't like how he did it, but you cannot say that it wasn't a compliment. And he's like, oh, Dan's like, I guess. And of course, Dan also just spent almost 5 full minutes of being silent with no pushback when Gino was spouting out all this nonsense about Caitlin Clark's fan base and about Caitlin Clark. And I'll give you one more little thing. Let's see, can we all remember this at the Olympics? One word for Clea Copper, that witch live on television representing your country at the Olympics.
Last one word for Clea Copper today.
That bitch.
Classy stuff. So glad you're representing the United States of America. By the way, that was 2 words. Now, how was that taken? Well, said with love and respect and a little angel emoji. A'ja Wilson on live television, my GOAT. Las Vegas Aces. By the way, we know what a great organization the Las Vegas Aces are if you've been following my story about them and the Derek Hamby stuff and Becky Hammon as the coach and A'ja Wilson and how she's acted and Kelsey Plum and how she's acted and Candace Parker and how she's acted and the fans booing Hamby when she played the Aces right after this lawsuit came out. And the Las Vegas Aces say, never change. A'ja Wilson, that witch with a laughing emoji. One word for Clea Copper. Another laughing emoji with the fire emojis. Same thing, laughing emoji. Gee, that seems to be, from A'ja Wilson's mouth to ours, we stand. Gold medal comment. As you can see, they loved A'ja Wilson at the Olympics on live TV, saying that about Copper, but they all piled on Pat McAfee for what he said. And so I don't care that Pat came out and said, oh, no, it's, I wasn't referring to ESPN. They're not the ones They're not the ones that made me stop and not talk about Caitlin Clark. I don't buy it. I don't have proof, but I'm going with all of this and what I've seen. I think they were in his ear after and say, hey, look, everyone believes you were talking about ESPN and that we censored you, and you got to fix that. And he was told to go out and say it wasn't that. Because we can just give a few examples. ESPN fired Sage Steele. ESPN fired Amy Ponder. Disney, who owns ESPN, fired Gina Carano. And they were all fired because they said things that ESPN as a company didn't like. And I wasn't going to mention this, so now his name slips my mind, but there was someone at ESPN just recently. I don't want to get into the whole topic, but just to give you an idea, he posted out, and I think it had to do with the boxing in the Olympics, and he just tweeted out, protect our daughters. And that was literally it. And it was deleted within a minute. And then he came back, but people got it. And then he came back and said that it didn't represent his employer, ESPN. It didn't represent their values. I don't understand how just protect our daughters doesn't represent values. Now, you could, if he had gotten into more about boxing and there were some other things that was, but just weird, right? And then they all piled on Pat McAfee. So why are Monica McNutt and Andrea Carter and Cheryl Swoops, and I'm not sure if she's officially with ESPN. Sorry about that. I know she's Queens of the Court, but why is she with the WNBA? But why are these people there and then Pat McAfee gets destroyed for what is act? And that's the other thing. Again, if you want to say, hey, Pat, I get that it was a compliment. I do. I'm not on board with how you did it. Cool. But we know that's not what happened. We know they all took it as he was hating on Caitlin Clark. And so, well, we can't have that. All the people that were hating on Caitlin Clark were like, oh my goodness, how could he do this? He can't do that. He can't talk. He can't say that about Caitlin Clark. This is terrible. Absolute and utter nonsense. So look, Pat, here's the thing. If it wasn't ESPN, you need to tell us why you're not talking about Caitlin Clark, why you can't talk about Caitlin Clark. You need to let us know what's going on, because everyone else who knows the story, like myself, is probably thinking, yeah, it's ESPN, and your statement after the fact confirms that it's ESPN because they told you, hey, you gotta make sure they don't think this is about us anymore because everyone thinks what you said is about us, and it's a bad look for us. It's a bad look for ESPN. So anyway, I'm gonna leave it there, and I apologize. I got on a rant here at the end, and you had to watch this thing over and over again. But hey, at least the sound wasn't on, right? But please let me know your thoughts in the comments below about the whole. I mean, look, let me know about the whole Pat McAfee thing and what he said. Let me know about this update, and do you think it was ESPN that made him stop talking about Caitlin Clark, or was something else? And then, of course, just the whole double standard and the hypocrisy with people like Gino Ariema trying to use it to their advantage and purposely misunderstand what Pat said, even if you don't like how he said it. If you are enjoying the comment, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I really do appreciate it. We're closing in on 7,000. So thank you to every single one of you that comment. And I'll save comment stuff for another video because it's awesome. So many of you are so great with just leaving comments to help out. And some of you leave really long, insightful comments with information that I didn't have, or, that I didn't cover that you thought would be interesting, and asking questions. And of course, we get the crazy people too. But I got to say, they're few and far between compared to the rest of you. So thank you for all of that. And I will talk to you later.